How's everybody doing tonight? Everybody doing okay? Has the food warmed you up a little bit? Yes. Oh my word! When I came down, it started getting a little cooler and cooler as we made our way down here, and then the aromas coming from this place. And then when I saw like hot grilled cheese sandwiches and soup, I was like, yes! I was so excited. Chef Carolyn, thank you very much. You are wonderful. Oh my word! Yes, you give her a big round of applause. The vegetable soup, I kid you not, I felt like I just jumped in my mama's garden in the backyard during springtime. So thank you very much. And your food last night was absolutely wonderful. Wonderlinger, thank you for the drinks. Yes, put your hands. Mike on the beer. Where's Mike? Mike, thank you very much. We love you, Mike. Chattanooga Whiskey for the whiskey tasting. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you very much, guys, for being here this weekend and sporting the Lookout Wild Film Festival. The new Terra, the outfits and the gear and the stuff. We're about to climb Kilimanjaro here in about 6 months, and I'm learning more about you guys. So thank you very much for being, or Terran, thank you very much for being the big sponsor for this weekend. Now, when it comes to Terra, the staff of Terra, let's give them a big round of applause. When it comes to recycling and composting, yes. The plates and the cups and the tasting glasses and flatware and the bowls, thank you. And we want to thank all of our wonderful volunteers for making this weekend possible. So, yes, you can put your hands together for our volunteers. And you're probably going, James, I'm trying to eat. I don't know if I want to clap right now. But the screening team, thank you, screening team. I've had the opportunity in previous years, yes, to be, is that Steve over there? Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. Steve and his team and Andy and his team, they've done such a great job the last several months, since this time last year, screening all of our wonderful films. And of course, we want to thank everybody that has been involved, are wonderful filmmakers. And this is my favorite part of the weekend, is getting to know these filmmakers. My name is James Howard. I work at News Channel 9, Setting 92.3 here in Chattanooga. And what I love about the Lookout Wild Film Festival here in our community, and I've lived here all my life, and I'm a hot air balloon pilot, and flying over dogwoods and big oaks and pine trees and what we call contouring, flying over nothing but trees and seeing the wildlife beneath me. And for me to look at a program and think, okay, I'm going to sit in a theater to watch a 52-minute documentary on the American chestnut, I'm like thinking, have I gone mad? But it was wonderful. It was such a beautiful, beautiful experience. And so, where do you get I just love venues like this. So, I mentioned this last night where my wife, Christy, she's gotten on to me several times the last few weeks because I've had the opportunity to see a lot of these films that's been featured. And when it comes to climbing gear and mountain biking gear and mountain bikes, Christy always says the film festival cost our family a lot of money. But that's what it's all about, right? All right, so there's a couple of people I want to introduce to you this evening, and we're going to get to know them. We're going to get to know their films better. We're going to get to know them as individuals. Zach LeClerc, raise your hand. Thank you very much. He's with the film Walls of Faith. We saw you on stage just a while ago, and of course we saw Walls of Faith, which was absolutely wonderful. And we've got Calvin Serban joining us tonight. He was behind the scenes. We didn't see you at all not even during the credits, right? Or your face wasn't shown at all. Okay, all right. So that's what's amazing. These guys, because these filmmakers, the guys that are filming the subjects, right? They're the ones that's carrying all the gear and learning how to climb. And I learned last night with hundreds of miles of mountain biking with a couple of guys with a few screws loose that the filmmaker, he goes, I had it easy because I was in a car the whole time while everybody else was doing all the mileage. And then we've got Cash Daniels, the conservation kid. So Cash, he has been cleaning up area streams, lakes, rivers, oceans since he was 7 years old. So we're going to be hearing a lot about Cash. And he's a dear friend of mine too. So his family's over here. Raise your hand, family. Yeah, the Daniels family. Yes. So, all right, let's talk about Walls of Faith. Raise your hand if you saw Walls of Faith. Okay, good. All right, I want to make sure everybody saw it. Yeah, that's a good thing. And Zach, I want to talk to you first because you're the climber. Where did your partner that climbed with you? Where is he tonight?
So it's actually kind of funny. Every single shoot that we went on, I actually had a different partner, a different belayer for that. It was one of those fun parts about the project was Calvin and I would be like, okay, we're going to go shoot this day. And I'm like, oh, we got to find someone to belay. So it's like going through the contacts. Hey, can you belay me? Can you belay me? Can you belay me? And just going through. So we actually really didn't have a consistent team really besides Calvin and I. We're the only two people that were at every shoot. Other than that, it was kind of just pulling together people who wanted to help. And I don't know, that's just how it went.
Yeah, sure. How long did it take you to shoot Walls of Faith?
Probably about 6 shoots, so a little over a month is kind of what the time took to shoot all, yeah.
Okay.
We're kind of restricted to a lot of rain that we had this last January, so that's kind of what limited us, but yeah.
Yeah, Calvin, I've got a lot of questions as a filmmaker with you here in just a little bit. I'm going to get to Cash. Cash, tell everybody how old you are. You want to pick up that mic? Tell everybody how old you are.
14.
14 years old. That's crazy. And what's amazing is, Aaron, Mom's looking at me. I remember, when did I first meet you? How old were you?
8.
8.
Yes.
It was like, to see him go from like this to this, he's like, you're taller than I am now.
Yeah.
It's insane how kids grow up. All right, so put us back when you were 7 years old, and when you were like, you know what, I want to start doing my part when it comes to the environment. Take us back.
So really, I started this work when I was 7 years old. Yeah. I found a plastic straw on the beach, and before that, I had always loved animals and anything that swam in the ocean or rivers. And after I found that straw, I wondered what I could do to help, since I lived in Tennessee, a landlocked state. And I found out that 80% of all ocean trash comes from rivers. So then I decided to do something about that. I knew someone had to do something about that. I was someone. So then I started with just little cleanups with my family. Then it got bigger. I partnered with lots of nonprofits to help. And now I've removed 30,000 pounds of trash. So
Is that not amazing? He's 14 years old. He's 14 years old. Goodness gracious. All right, so Calvin, how long have you been filming?
Man, I started when I was like really young. I used to grab my parents' handy cam. It was a little Sony camcorder, and I would just go outside and film myself and record the weather. I just always loved to be outside. So probably, I don't know, it's probably like 8 years old when I first started playing around with cameras.
How long have you known Zach?
Probably about 3 years. We met here at Southern Adventist University.
Okay. Because I was going to ask you, a film like this, how does it even start? I guess it starts with a friendship, and then it's like, hey, let's show the world what we do, and what, we have the opportunity to share our faith, right? In this film, what was that experience like, putting this together? Yeah.
So me and Zach started looking into this film 2022. That December of 2022, we started planning it out. His brother was doing a film festival out at Walla Walla, Washington. It was like a spiritual film festival, and we just wanted to be a part of that and kind of showcase this local community here too. So then we decided, hey, why not submit it here at Lookout Wild Film Festival?
Yeah. Zach, how long you been climbing?
So yeah, it's kind of a funny story. So I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina. That's where home is. That's where Mom's cooking is. And I did in our family, we've always been going outside, and the big activity that they have always been doing is mountain biking. So that was my big thing, and I love mountain biking. And I went to a boarding school actually in Asheville, North Carolina, where it's some of the best single track arguably in the country there. So I got like way into it and stuff. And I figured out I was going to college in Chattanooga, and I was like, oh, there's not infinite miles of mountain biking here. Like, what do people do around here? So I got on Google and was like, hey, like, what do people do outside in Chattanooga? That was my Google search. And rock climbing, Outside Magazine article came up about rock climbing. And I was like, well, I guess I'll try that out. And it stuck. So I've been doing it ever since. And every year it seems like I get way more into it than the year before.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me, and this is what I love about film festivals like this, because we get to see everybody's passion and their blood, sweat, and tears in these films. So you've only been doing this for 3 years. You took us up a rock face, and I'm guessing that was Sunset Rock, right?
That was the Tennessee Wall, T-Wall.
Okay, the Tennessee Wall. So there was a lot of huffing and puffing. It was a big, it was a big deal when you guys made it to the top. Talk to us about the experience filming that. How long it took you? Because we see films and they're limited, they're edited. What was that like?
So the film fest that we were first making it for, there was a March submission deadline, and we had kind of established kind of our idea and started filming for it. Actually, this very weekend last year, we went to Lookout Wild on Friday night. Saturday night, we were doing all the high point shooting that you guys saw, and I think we were also doing some outdoor shooting that week too. And we had all this rain. We weren't able to climb much, and that shoot that we did the final climb on was the weekend before spring break, which I was going on a ski trip in Canada that spring. And then the submission date was right when we got back. So there was a lot of stuff going on. Like, I'd never been on the route before, so I didn't even know if I could climb it until like the weekend before. And there was also pressure of like, it's got to happen today, or else I don't know, we would have to just change our whole film. And so yeah, there was, I don't know, it was hard. There was one moment where I was mid-route up at like a kind of a rest, just kind of dangling off these two holds, and we're waiting for cameras to go up. And I'm like sitting here for like 5 minutes, like, geez, like if this is the reason why I fall off, I'm gonna be so mad. and so like, I don't know, like, I don't think either of us really expected how much goes into filming stuff like rock climbing, because we'd never done it before. And we were very surprised. So I think just topping on that route was like, we're done. Like, that's what made it so special.
Okay. From mountaintops to diving into the ocean, Cash, I got to ask you this. So here I am, I'm at home with my girls, and I get this text, and he's diving with sharks. So you go outside the rim when it comes to getting away from Lake Chickamauga, getting away from the Tennessee River, getting away from our area streams and creeks. You've broadened your horizons to oceans. What does that look like right now for you, Cash?
Well, I am a certified scuba diver. I've been since I was 10 years old, which is the minimum. The day I turned 10, I asked my mom, when are we doing this? Yeah, and I've been diving in Florida maybe 5 times. I love the Blue Heron Bridge. I've seen tons of animals there. Last year, I went to Tiger Beach in the Bahamas to dive with tiger sharks, and that was really fun. And yeah, oceans, even though I live on rivers, I've always loved the ocean because the animals there are so colorful. They're beautiful. It's like you're in an alien world, but you just can't get down there when you can't breathe underwater. And yeah, I just love being underwater because you can just float around, and it's just really beautiful down there, and you can just see forever in the ocean.
Yeah. Cash, put us in your shoes on a weekend or, several times throughout the month where you check on those nets, the net contraptions that you've placed.
The monofilament bins, yeah.
What are they called again?
I call them monofilament recycling bins.
Okay. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so these bins are made to collect fishing line because here in Chattanooga and in Tennessee we have a bunch of fishing tournaments, and all that fishing brings in a lot of waste, like fishing line, which gets tangled around animals and eventually kills them. And I've seen these things in Florida a couple times, and I wondered why we didn't have them here in Tennessee. So I decided to do something about that. And now we have, I think, 180 of them out now. 158, yeah.
Wow.
And I put them up in state parks, public boat ramps. I'm good friends with the commissioner of T-Deck, so he helps me get these out. And now they're required in state parks to be a green park. And recently I went to do 9 parks in 2 days.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Cash. We got about 5 more minutes, and we're going to direct your attention to a special author that we're going to do a little Q&A. And I want, here in the next few minutes, I want to, you guys have the opportunity to ask these gentlemen some questions. But Calvin, I want to ask you, and I think you briefly touched on it, when it comes to, the behind the scenes and, working with climbers, you don't have 3 years of experience in climbing, right? When you wanted to film these guys, you were like, I've got to learn how to climb, because you did do a little climbing, right?
So I didn't actually do like some actual climbing. Zach had to teach me a lot of stuff about how to use a lot of the gear, how to use a Jumar, which is a piece of gear that helps you ascend a rope and get up to be able to get some of these shots. So I actually had to learn, especially for that sunset rock shoot. I think it was like the weekend before or something, which was crazy. But I got up there. This man was going way faster than me. I'm like, bro, slow down. I'm trying to catch up with you. But yeah, it was challenging.
Yeah. And real quickly, when we say walls of faith, and obviously you were talking about your gear and putting trust in gear. Can you expound a little bit with the faith and the climbing?
Yeah. So Zach was learning how to use trad gear throughout this film, and just building his trust with that gear since he had never been really using it. And then also just kind of the parallel of building your trust in God and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
I don't know, just I think, the analogy we drew with the trad climbing, I mean, if you guys were driving your car and you weren't sure if your brakes worked, how fast would you drive that car? Right? You didn't know. And you'd probably be a little timid. You'd probably be like, 80 miles an hour on the interstate? That's a lot. And I mean, the same thing is the systems we use in rock climbing is what we depend on to arrest a fall when they happen. Falls aren't an if, they're a when. And if you don't trust that whole system, you're going to be petrified on that wall, and you're not going to be able to just push yourself and do hard things. And what the outdoors continually shows is that when you put your head to it, you can do amazing hard things. And I think that the faith tie to that was, I believe that, if we put our faith in a God that is there for us and is real, we can do really hard things. And that was just a beautiful tie that I've been taught through my outdoor experiences. And I don't know, I think there's a little bit of there for everyone too.
That's great. Any questions? Any questions? Cash, so I want you to take me back. You were on the show with me, and we were saying vote. Tell everybody what we were voting for.
Yeah, so I've hauled off trash a lot, and all of that was in my mom's SUV. And I haul off beer cans from a dog park. That car smells like a brewery. So to help my mom with that, I decided to buy a truck not buy a truck. At that point, I had won an award for $30,000 that was going to go for my nonprofit, and I can only use that for stuff with the Cleanup Kids, my organization. And at first I was up for this Drive It Forward award that helped people in the community that needed cars for the work that they're doing. And we needed votes to, no, not that one. Yeah, that award that I won, I needed votes, and it was based on votes because it was from Cox Enterprises, and it's a big, they're really big into conservation. So they had 3 categories, and one was the youth category, and I was up for that. And I needed votes for that, and I did end up winning, and the top prize was $30,000.
That's awesome. Yeah, he had to think about it. Which award? He's won a few awards in his young life. That's awesome. And he you guys texted me a picture of the new SUV. Now, you guys have done a lot even since then in the last couple of months. Does your mom's brand new SUV smell like a brewery?
Yeah, still. Well, we left PVC glue in there, and now it smells like PVC glue.
Okay. Yes.
Has anybody blatantly littered in front of you, and how bad did you make them hurt for that?
I've seen people throw trash out the window, but you can't really stop those people. But I've not seen anybody litter in front of me that wasn't in a vehicle, so I have not had to get on to anybody about that yet.
He can put on a pretty hefty body slam. So, yeah. Let's give these gentlemen a big round of applause. Zach and Calvin and Cash, thank you very much. Thank you. Real quickly, before we get to our wonderful author tonight, what's next?
Well, I'm going to Costa Rica in July on a 2-week research trip, tagging sharks, turtles, and going diving. And that's with one of my friends down there, mainly to just bring awareness to sharks down there because they were recently taken off endangered species. Not endangered. Well, now they can be hunted. They were a protected species, but now they're not. So we're going down there to raise awareness for them and teach kids down there to respect sharks and love them.
Yeah, fantastic. Be careful with those sharks. Zach and Galvin.
Well, what's next for us is hopefully we're back here at Lookout Wild, and maybe next year, maybe in a couple of years with another film. So that's what's next.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. So give us about 2 minutes, and we'll have Patrick Dean, the author of the book that's right in front of you, and we're going to talk about another book that he has out as well. So give us about 2 minutes. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. All right, that was about 2 minutes, right? That was a quick little costume change. So, have you ever met somebody? Have you ever met somebody in a room and you shake their hands, you talk to them for like 30 seconds, and you say to yourself, "I want to hang out with this guy more often. I want to spend a couple hours with this guy." And this is how I felt when I met you this weekend. This is Patrick Dean, and everybody raise your book up in the air. Raise your book up in the air. There we go. I want to make sure everybody gets a copy of the book. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we're going to talk about this book. We're going to talk about this book here in just a few moments. But Patrick Dean writes on the outdoors, in the environment. He has worked as a teacher, a political media director, and is presently the executive director of a Tail Trail nonprofit. Rail Trail nonprofit. I'm going to ask you about that here in just a few minutes. An avid trail runner, paddler, and mountain biker. He lives with his wife and dogs on the Cumberland Plateau in Tennessee, and is the author of 2 books, which we're going to be discussing tonight. Let's give Patrick Dean a big round of applause tonight. All right, so let's talk about this book first, right?
Yeah.
This book right here. It's called Nature's Messenger, and This is basically about understanding American wildlife, right?
That's not a bad start. Sure.
Okay.
And the reason we're doing this out of order, because this is the newer book, but I'm going to read a little excerpt from this one. So I thought it made more sense to talk about this one first. So in 1722, an artist, explorer, and naturalist named Mark Catesby stepped ashore in Charleston, South Carolina, and he spent several years roaming around the Carolina colony. He went to the frontier, which in 1723 was where Augusta, Georgia is now. That was the frontier. He saw bison there. He spent a lot of time with Native Americans. He then spent a year in the Bahamas, went back to England and produced the very first illustrated guide to North American plants and animals. The cover of the book is actually a montage of his art.
Yeah.
No one in England had any idea what an ivory-billed woodpecker or a magnolia tree or an American bullfrog looked like. There were no images. They'd never made it back to England, and Catesby was the guy who brought those in this glorious full-color, engraved and painted, magnificent work called The Natural History of the Carolinas, which was one of the most expensive books of its day. This was all a century before that guy, Audubon. So it's a fascinating story to me. It's the scientific revolution isn't going on in England. Isaac Newton is a president of the Royal Society. It's a time of intellectual ferment and just obsession with the natural world and natural history. And so it was a lot of fun to write about.
Now, how long has this book been out?
This spring.
This spring. So it's okay.
Yeah.
So it's brand new.
May, I think.
I always love to get into authors' minds. And gosh, we've got 20 minutes with you. Usually on my show we have 3.5. So take us back when you started writing. And have you always written about nature and the great outdoors?
That's a good question. My very first thing I ever wrote for publication was a poem I wrote about the Mississippi Delta when I was 17. It's where I grew up. And it was about a farmer and the land in the Mississippi Delta. So I guess you could say yes, James. I've always been writing about nature and the outdoors. Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you, take us back when you first fell in love with nature.
That's a good question too. I did the Boy Scout thing. I spent a lot of time outside riding my bike around and hanging out in the woods and all that. So, I guess it goes back that far. In college, I didn't do a whole lot of that stuff. I did run some. And then in my 20s, I started getting into climbing and distance running and all that sort of thing, and it picked up from there.
Yeah.
So.
What's the biggest takeaway with this book? When we read this book, and maybe some of you have already read this book, at the end, when we go out for dinner or, there's a book club, what do you want people to be talking about this particular book?
Oh, I hope they'll think that this man had a really fascinating life and a really fascinating time, and I hope they'll come away with some new knowledge about sort of what was going on. So, especially in places like South Carolina, because I have this theory that when it comes to American history, we go to Jamestown, and then the next thing you know, it's Bunker Hill, and and Concord and the Revolution, and so. But the 1720s, 1730s were a vastly different time than what we know about. South Carolina was the richest colony, and it was very different from Virginia and Massachusetts. It was more like the Caribbean. It was more like Jamaica or Barbados, and so it's a fascinating sort of social history going on there. So that sort of thing, and the history of the intellectual movement in England, like I was talking about. The coffee houses were wonderful places where people hung out and exchanged information. The botanists had their own coffee house. And, it was a strange time intellectually, but really fascinating. And I hope that sort of thing makes it a great story.
Yeah. What was it like researching all this? And how long did it take you to put all this together?
It took me about a year and a half from signing the contract to turning in the book. And it was a lot of fun. I didn't get to go to England, but I spent a lot of time. I did do a couple of research trips to Charleston, by the way, which is, that was some hardship, let me tell you. Staying at Folly Beach for a week while I researched the book. Yeah. But no, I made some connections in England. Both of these books have made wonderful connections with people who are sort of related to what I was trying to learn about. So, and the research I'm such a nerd that the research stuff is really great. It's one of those things where it's hard to stop researching and start writing sometimes.
Sure. Because the thing is, here's what, and you've touched on this briefly, and I want to dig a little deeper, but wow, the subject and this individual, like when did it click for you that you wanted to know more about this guy?
Well, I've got a kind of strange story about that because a long time ago, like the 90s, I was doing a lot of reading, and like people like Wendell Berry and early naturalists like William Bartram, who cruised through the Southeast in the 1770s, 80s. And I was reading this magazine called Garden Design. It was really glossy and really well laid out and all that stuff. And there was a little blurb in there. I don't know how I remember this, but there was a little blurb about I think it was an art exhibition of Catesby's art, this naturalist in the early 1700s. And I thought that was really cool. Let me find out more about this guy. And there was nothing. And it was like the day before the internet. So I couldn't Google or anything, and that was it.
Crazy to think
So I kind of shrugged and went, okay, well, whatever. And then I had finished this book and turned it in, and I hadn't even asked myself if I was going to write another one or when it was going to be or what it was going to be. And Catesby just popped into my head, like, I wonder if there's anything to write about him now. And it turned out that in the intervening years, there'd been research, there'd been critical studies and all that sort of thing. So there was a lot there, and there was the internet. So, so that's how the book happened.
Very interesting. Very interesting. All right. So I could talk to Patrick all night long, and I do not. I don't have my phone with me to look at the time because I know we have to dismiss at 6. Any questions about this particular book right here, Nature's Messenger?
Has Catesby's natural history been reprinted? Is it available?
I think so. I think there is a facsimile edition that you, and if you want to buy the original, I know a second edition. There were like 3 editions, and I know a second edition sold at auction last year for $240,000.
Whoa!
So,
wow.
Yeah. But I think there is a facsimile edition too. Yep.
Yeah, very interesting. Any other questions about this particular book? Okay. All right. So let's move on. And Christy, what time is it? I hate asking that. Quarter. Okay. All right. All right. So A Window to Heaven. Now, this is the book everybody got, right? When I read what this book is about, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to start reading this. Going back to 1913, an Episcopal priest, right, climbed Denali. All right. So, talk to us about this book, because I pretty much that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And nothing to say.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm going to read an excerpt in a minute, just the first couple of pages of the prologue, which will pretty much explain the book. But should I just do that?
Yeah, you want to do that?
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
It's only 3 or 4 minutes long. Hudson Stuck could barely breathe. A tough and experienced outdoorsman who had spent the last decade dog sledding and tramping across Alaska and the Yukon, Stuck nevertheless gasped in the high, thin air, 20,000 feet above sea level. He and his 3 companions stood just below the summit ridge of Denali, the highest peak in North America, on a clear, windy, 4-degree below day. Stuck wore 6 pairs of socks inside his leather moccasins, with iron ice creepers or crampons attached to the bottom. Immense lynx fur-lined mitts covered inner Scotch wool gloves, and his torso was layered beneath a fur-hooded Alaskan parka. Yet, Stuck wrote, until high noon, feet were like lumps of iron. Behind them stretched what Stuck called the dim blue lowlands of the future Denali National Park, with patches of stream and patches of lake that still carry ice along their banks. A few smaller peaks squatted off to the northeast. In every other direction, the immensity of the mountain they perched on blocked their views of Mount Foraker and the other peaks in the Alaska Range. Above them, just a few hundred more yards of climbing, and the prize, to be the first humans to set foot atop Denali, would be theirs. It was June 7th, 1913. They were Stuck, Episcopal Archdeacon of Alaska and the Yukon, the oldest of the group at nearly 50 years old, short and wiry, his neatly trimmed beard the only one among the 4. Walter Harper, the youngest at age 20, half Alaska native, fit and confident. Harry Karstens, 34, calmly competent from his years in the Alaskan backcountry, and Robert Tatum, 21, the greenest member of the team. They had launched this expedition 8 weeks earlier, enduring bitter cold, severe altitude, and the loss of key supplies to a campfire. The team had arrived at their last camp just below 18,000 feet the night before. Awakening to a brilliant, bitterly cold morning, the party had reached the summit slope after 8 grueling hours, with Harper in the lead. Surrounded by nothing but snow and ice, their toes and fingers numb, they approached the final ridge to the summit. Though all the men were unable to fully take in air, it was curious to see every man's mouth open for breathing, Stuck would later write. It was hardest for him. Everything kept turning black for Stuck as he choked and gasped, almost unable to get any breath at all. The missionary's load had already been reduced. The other members had divided up the contents of his pack, leaving him only the bulky mercurial barometer he had stubbornly carried up the mountain to make scientific observations on the summit. Now he struggled even under the barometer's weight. Finally, Harper, the youngest and strongest member of the expedition on this day, doubled back to where Stuck knelt in the snow, took the barometer, and hoisted it onto his back. Harper's presence on the mountain was important to Stuck for more than just his youthful vigor and physical strength. Since coming to Alaska in 1904, Stuck had become a fervent champion of the rights of the native people. In the Alaska of this era, a raucous and deeply unsettled meeting point between traditional native ways and the modern white culture, quote, a center of feverish trade and feverish vice, unquote, in Stuck's words. Stuck spent most of his time ministering to the Athabascan peoples in his region. He bore no illusions that their lives would be improved by the onslaught of Western ways. Harper, who was half Athabascan and half Irish, represented Stuck's aspirations for the natives of the far north. Walter's father, Arthur Harper, a distant figure in his life, was a pioneer in the history of white Alaska, the first to imagine gold in the Yukon, where he met Walter's mother. Walter was raised by his mother in an Athabascan village, and at 16 met Stuck at the mission school in Tenana. They forged a lifelong connection. On Denali, in Stuck's words, Harper, quote, ran Karstens close in strength, pluck, and endurance. Robert Tatum was a Tennessean who had come to Alaska to study for holy orders in the Episcopal Church. He had proved himself the previous winter by joining a heroic relief effort, helping deliver by dog sled desperately needed supplies to 2 women missionaries down the dangerous ice of the frozen Tanana River. His experience with surveying tools and other scientific instruments, and his willingness to serve as the cook for the expedition, made Tatum a very pleasant comrade. Harry Karstens had been in Alaska for almost 2 decades and learned its often harsh lessons firsthand. He had earned the right to be considered a sourdough, a term derived from prospectors' habit of carrying a starter of sourdough bread in a pouch around their neck, later expanded to describe those who'd been in the far north long enough to prove themselves. He had made his reputation in the backcountry since the Klondike Gold Rush of 1897, making his reputation on the mail routes, prospector streams, and hunting expeditions of early 1900s Alaska. Stuck explicitly relied on Karstens for his outdoor skills and experience, as well as his toughness. Karstens, on the other hand, had less sympathy than Harper for Stuck's difficulties. To Karstens, a hardened miner and backwoodsman, Stuck's insistence on spending time with the books and writing materials he brought to Denali, not to mention the burden that carrying such weight imposed on everyone, amounted to, quote, little more than, quote, lying in the tent, unquote. Karstens' antagonism toward Stuck, which increased with each step up the mountain, was fated to flare into far worse. For his part, Stuck had always admired Karstens, describing him as strong, competent, and resourceful, the true leader of the expedition in the face of difficulty and danger. He would never understand his former partner's antagonism in the wake of the expedition's success and fame. But for now, Stuck and the others had to put all animosities aside and focus on putting one foot in front of the other, slowly and deliberately gasping and grasping for the summit.
Wow. Thank you. Dean, as you were reading your such well-written words, I was thinking if we had a film festival like we do today back in 1913, what we would see on the big screen. But I'm glad you've written it in words where we can experience what he experienced. Did you follow his footsteps, like in researching his journey? Like as in, I don't think you climbed Denali, but but did you spend time in Alaska? Or what was that research like for you?
I was due to go to Alaska in May of 2020.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, that answers that question.
My book was due to the publisher in October of 2020.
Oh wow.
So nope. If you want imposter syndrome, try writing a book about a place you've never been.
Yeah. Sure.
So, but I did make some wonderful connections in Alaska. I met virtually on the phone and through social media and through the internet a man named Scott Fisher who was Stuck's successor as the rector of St. Matthew's Church in Fairbanks, and was old enough to have known people who knew Stuck personally. And it was a wonderful connection to make. At one point, I think he sensed I was struggling with the manuscript, and in the mail, without him telling me, arrived a small rock from the Yukon River that he said was a talisman to help me, to totem to help me get finished with the book. So, haven't been there yet. I want to. I want to go dog sledding really badly. So we'll see.
Yeah. Denali, I guess the highest peak in North America. What kind of experience did he have before he took on Denali?
Well, he'd always been a fervent fan of exploration literature. The University of the South in Swanee, where he graduated in 1892, if you didn't know that already, has a good chunk of his library, these beautiful leather-bound editions of polar exploration and all that in the archives of the university. So I got to, oh, yeah, I need to tell you about this. So this is a digression, but I think it'll be fun. So in 1908, a man named Dr. Frederick Cook claimed to have summited Denali. And it was dubious from the start. I mean, even the people who, like prospectors sitting in Fairbanks, Anchorage or Fairbanks, were saying, he didn't have enough time. He's made this up, right? And it launched one of the greatest expeditions on Earth. It's called the Sourdough Expedition because it's basically a bunch of prospectors and miners sitting in a bar in Fairbanks going, he didn't make it. We're going to go up there and prove it. And they got so close. They came so close to being the first in 1910. No experience whatsoever. It's a great story. It's in there. It's in there. But in the archives in Swanee is Stuck's copy of Frederick Cook's book, purporting to be about the summit of Denali. And Stuck's an Englishman. He was born in London and all that stuff. So you're looking along, and there's he's writing in the margins, and there's one place where he's written in the margin in pencil, "What rot." And another place, it's like, "Here the true narrative ends," or something like that. And then across the top of the frontispiece, I'm not going to remember it word for word, he writes something in, so those are in pencil, but then he got out his pen, because I think he wanted to really, say what was going on. And he said something like, "A fake story of an ascent that never happened." and signed it, put HS next to it, so to make sure that, so yeah, that was one of the cool things about doing that story.
Yeah, what's amazing, and I can't wait to start reading this book, is that Stuck did this in 1913, and it's still, with the technology we have today and the gear that we have today, it's still one of the most challenging mountains to climb.
Right. I mean, imagine what he could do if he was in Terran, I mean, if he was like head to toe Terran, I mean, he'd be like,
right.
Dude.
Exactly. Okay, so you just touched the surface of this book. I'm going to ask you the same question. It's the question I'm sure you get asked a lot in every interview. What's the big takeaway after we've read this book? What do you want us to be saying after we've read this literature?
Well, one of the things I haven't said too much about is both of these books have a social angle to them. One of the cool things about Catesby, when they make the feature motion picture of the book, Nature's Messenger, I want Catesby's character, because he was in the Low Country, he met the planters, he went to their houses, and we know he did that. But in the movie, I want there to be a scene of what we really think happened, which he went behind the plantation manor to the quarters where the slaves lived and grew the enslaved Africans lived and grew their food and medicine, because it's in the book. I mean, he cites them as sources for knowledge, and one of the ways he was ahead of his time was, he actually cites them. He refers to a Negro doctor as some, it's obviously a medicine man, so to speak, someone who was, expert in those things, and so. He had that social angle to what he did, and Stuck, as I read in the prologue, was a passionate. Still remember today. I have stories about them still talking about Stuck today, Alaska Natives, that is, for the work he did on their behalf. So there's a lot of different missionary histories in the world. At the same time in Alaska, there were certain sects, S-E-C-T-S, who were doing the more typical, as we think of that missionary work sometimes, where they were trying to wipe out every vestige of native culture. You know, you can't keep your language, you can't keep your dress, you have to be a white person, and he was different, and I think that's a really interesting story and an important part of his story, as well as his exploits in the high mountains.
So interesting. All right, questions. You guys excited about reading this book? Yes. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
I was waiting to see if anybody else has had one. When doing your research on this, I think about something that you mentioned. All the gear we have today and the advances and the lightweight. Are those the real pioneer? I mean, are they the real adventurers? Are we imposters? You know, with our one-pound shoes and our two-pound coffee and whatever it is. I mean, their gear has to weigh so much.
Right. I think, and I'm not just saying this because of who's in the room. I heard you guys murmuring with the two over there. I don't know about that. But, no, I think it enables people to push the envelope even farther. That's my answer. I really do think that that's what that's all about. I mean, I think they did incredible things with what they had, and I think we just had a whole weekend full. Thank you, Andy. We had a weekend full of people pushing it just as much as Hudson Stuck did. So I think that's how I feel about it.
Great question. It's my understanding we need to wrap things up. What's next? Good gracious, what's next for you?
Before I answer that question, let me tell everybody that if you want your book personalized, I'm going to sit right here for a few minutes, and if you happen to need to pick up one of my other books, I can do that too while I'm here for a few minutes, just to let you know. Also, later on, the book and cover always keeps my book in stock. If you need one later on, go see the great people at Book and Cover. They're wonderful people. I don't have a next book yet. I'm trying not to let it drive me batty. But I'm pretty sure it will be involved with exploration, nature, and the sort of social justice issues that we've talked about. That seems to be my nexus. So,
great.
Wish me luck in finding a new subject.
Absolutely. It's been such an honor and joy. Thank you. Thank you very much. And enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you very much for being a part of this special afternoon. Thank you. Okay, good. Yeah, perfect.